Welcome to Making Sense of the Madness. We've got a great show lined up for you today. We've got John Krycek. We're going to be talking about not only Trump coming in with the Department of Education, supposedly revamping all of that, but his book, School World Order, and an overarching agenda that really goes beyond administrations and is moving us into a more technocratic, AI-driven education world. You're not going to want to miss it. Buckle up and get ready to make sense of the madness. And we are back. We are joined by John Krycek. His latest is TrumpEd 2025, School Choice, Corporatization, Social Impact Finance, and the Dismantling of the Department of Education. You can check it out over at unlimitedhangout.com. I will warn people, certainly not light reading. So let's start from the very beginning here. First of all, you've written the book, School World Order, and right out of the gates in this article, you really make the comparison of this Project 2025 white paper and the individuals involved and what's already currently going on with the Trump administration, although he tried to distance himself from it on the campaign. So really that's the starting point. I do want to go all the way down the line into this article, get into privatized Peter Thiel investments, PFAs. I'm sorry, not PFAs. What is it? Pay for success, PFSs. Yes, PFSs, etc. All those things. But let's start at the very beginning and even beyond the Department of Education and the education system. Project 2025 and the people he's already brought in that were a big part of that.
Yeah, so he tried to distance himself from it. I believe me and you kind of dove into this a little bit back when you were doing TNT as well. If you look at the advisory board and the authors of the education chapter, you're going to find affiliates of several neoconservative, beltway libertarian think tanks, and these include the America First Policy Institute, the American Enterprise Institute, the American Legislative Exchange Council, the Cato Institute, EdChoice, which is formerly the Milton Friedman Foundation for Educational Choice, Heritage Foundation, and also George Mason University. I don't know. I don't remember if that's actually in Project 2025, but that is another one of those state policy network think tanks that is affiliated with Lindsay M. Burke, who is the main author of that. So another thing that's worth noting is that I believe there was close to 29 cabinet or other high-level executive officials that were in his first department or his first presidency who contributed to Project 2025. And then there's several people who have been appointed to cabinet positions. One that two that come up off the top of my head is Russell Vogt and the current CIA director, Ratcliffe. So you had people that he had in the first administration involved in writing Project 2025. You have people in this new administration that were involved in writing Project 2025. And then you have a whole milieu of these, again, neocon libertarian or beltway libertarian think tanks that have been involved in school choice corporatization for a very long time, many of which show up in my book, School World Order.
So let's talk about this executive order. One of the things that you highlight and kind of go over rather extensively in the article is the fact that despite this executive order that seems like, and the fact that they're going to look at the Department of Education, promises made, promises kept, this really isn't going to keep the government, if you will, out of education. And it is not going to make it a quote-unquote states' rights issue. Instead, it's going to be mandated from the top with federal regulations, no matter how you slice it and whatever they give you. And then there's going to be this integration of kind of this PFS system that you talk about, pay for success, whether it's under that guise or others, of different types of NGOs. And these NGOs, despite the hype around USAID being dismantled and defunded, are very much still around and going to be around for some time on both sides of the political spectrum.
Yeah. So, the Department of Education, essentially all it really does is administer and oversee the federal entitlements. It does also some research and development in terms of curriculum and pedagogy, but mainly it's there to oversee the federal entitlements. So even if you get rid of the Department of Education, all that's going to do is send the entitlement funding to other departments. So if you really wanted to get the entire federal government out of education, you'd have to repeal at least 5 different federal bills governing legislation. So the first would be the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. Second would be the Every Student Succeeds Act. Then you have the Higher Education Act. You also have the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, and then you have the Workforce Investment Opportunities Act. That one is actually more overseen by the Department of Labor, but they do some public-private partnerships, particularly with like adult and technical education, to help facilitate what they call career pathways to workforce training programs. Okay, so if you don't repeal all of those entitlements, they're going to send all that funding back to other departments. So in Project 2025, it stipulates that the Institute of Education Sciences, which took a really big hit with the DOGE cuts, that's going to go to the Census Bureau of the Department of Commerce. The Office of Civil Rights would go to the Department of Justice. The Office of Career and Technical and Adult Education would go to the Department of Labor. Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services would go to HHS. Office of Post-Secondary Education would also go to HHS. And, I finally got it. The article came out the day that Linda McMahon was doing her hearings to be sworn in. And so I didn't get to, I was too busy responding to vitriol all day. Got called a libtard and told to leave the country and things like that. So I finally got a chance to look at McMahon's responses to the questions, and what she has stipulated is totally in line with that. They asked her, "What are you going to do with IDEA funding, Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act?" She said, "Well, I think I don't know if it might be served better at HHS." And when they asked her about Title IX, that's the entitlement that enforces gender equality in sports and gender discrimination more broadly. They said, "Well, how are you going to enforce that?" And she said, "Well, I don't know that might not work better at the Department of Justice." So all of the things that she's saying, all the things that they have in alignment indicate. They asked her several times also, "Are you going to defund?" She says, "No, the president's goal is not to defund." So with federal funding necessarily comes regulations. They're not going to write a blank check.
Let's talk about Linda McMahon for a little bit, and who she's been connected to over the years. What establishments, NGOs, and I do believe Linda McMahon, that this is Vince's wife, correct? This is the WWE queen herself. So I want people, before we even get into policy or any of that, for some reason, we seem to have a blind spot in this country via celebritard culture on what we're supposed to care about and what we're not supposed to care about. People going wild for Diddy right now. It's Diddy time. We got all the Diddy in the world. Meanwhile, first of all, Vince McMahon and the WWE, back when it was the WWF, you had a huge scandal called the Cream Team scandal of teenage boys, and even younger in some cases, being utilized in a child sex ring. Now, Pat Patterson, who was very high up into former wrestler, very high up in the WWF, WWE for a very long time. Some very bad allegations against Pat Patterson. That ran all the way up. It's a whole big scandal no one ever talked about. I'd insist people check out a interview with Rowdy Roddy Piper about Pat Patterson and him coming into the business. And let's just say Rowdy gets a little uncomfortable. He usually doesn't. And I'm going to let people judge that for themselves. Now, let's fast forward. Vince McMahon was 100% fully worked out of the WWE with some pretty wild allegations out there. First of all, it's really been an open secret that Vince McMahon cheats on his wife. That's whatever. Let's just say the things that finally put it over the edge. We don't get into a lot of poopy talk here on MSOM. But you can go read the details of why he's no longer with the WWE. His wife is heading up this department. That's wild. These blind spots that the quote-unquote conservatives, and this is why you'll never see me play the team baseball that a lot of people want me to play, John. This woman's probably the last person in the world that I would be like, that's what I want in my Department of Education. So aside from all of that and those, because if you think that she's not aware or working like a viper behind the scenes for her husband on behalf of some of the craziest stuff ever, you're naive. You're simply naive. What else is she involved in? Please go through that aspect before she gets this gig.
Well, unlike DeVos, she does actually have a little bit of education experience. She was on the State Board of Education in Connecticut, and has been active in, the America First Policy Institute and also America First Works, promoting school choice there. It should be noted, I think I did note it earlier, but the America First Policy Institute is one of these think tanks that's part of the Koch brothers funded state policy network. But as far as education, I mean, that's pretty much the bulk of her pedigree. I mean, otherwise, she has a background in the Small Business Administration and has been on, the Trump wagon for a while. But that's pretty much the extent of her pedigree when it comes to education.
Mm-hmm. But she has been involved behind the scenes in this political arena now for decades. So that's the other thing that I want people to understand. She's not coming out of nowhere, out of the goodness of her heart as a grandma, thinking we want to make America great again. This again is a person that has been highly politically motivated in this arena for decade upon decade. No.
Oh, yeah. Definitely, yeah.
So we've got McMahon. We've got what's going to be really a reorganization of all these things. I want to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about the school choice because I'm all for the school choice. But where's the money really going to be funneled into and what strings are attached with that? Because there's a lot of language in here that sounds nice, and then you keep reading, and then there's language in there that essentially negates the idea of the first language that's promoting freedom of choice, etc., and then gets back into quote-unquote restrictions. TrumpEd 2025 is the article. You can check it out over on unlimitedhangout.com. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back. More John Klychek after this.
Everything you're showing us, Steve, I'm looking at it going, I want one of those. I want one of those. And I think you guys are too. So don't forget to go to the Patriot TV store and you can see all of Steve's Made in America shirts and just everything. Shirts, hats, socks, sunglasses, you name it, workout gear, you've got everything.
So we're going to bring some of our other people back again to show you some of the other items.
Okay.
And we keep changing so you get a good idea of what we carry.
Yeah, I mean,
See a lot of,
exactly. Look
items.
at the variety and look at the choices you have. Today's guest again was Steve Stern of the Flag Shirt Company. And again, they've been in business over 70 years. High quality products, fast delivery, and amazing customer service. So for any reason something doesn't fit, you can send it right back. And again, I'm going to say it one more time, the Patriot TV store. You've got to go to Patriot TV store and get your items now.
What do a neurosurgeon, a country artist, and a television and radio host have in common? They all saw the writing on the wall. Big banks sharing your financial information with big government. Join them as owners in Old Glory Bank, the pro-America online bank that protects your privacy, security, and liberty. Invest today at own.oldglorybank.com.
And we are back. The article is TrumpEd 2025 School Choice Corporatization, Social Impact Finance, and the Dismantling of the Department of Education. I wouldn't call it a dismantling. Again, I would call it a reorganization. They may get rid of it in name, but so many of the strings will still be attached. I liken it to, hey, maybe Boeing eventually goes under. Someone's going to swallow them up, whether it's SpaceX or another or Bezos' company. They're going to be doing the same exact thing. It's just like SpaceX is a rebranding of NASA, putting them in the background, maybe working them out and giving you some new flavor. This is the government angle of that. Now, on the surface, a lot of it is good, right? Let's be honest. It's not like the education system is killing it right now. And there is a lot of overt DEI stuff. I'm all for Trump getting us out of the WHO. Again, there's a list of things that I want to be intellectually honest with myself about. Woohoo! I'd also like to get out of the UN and the UN out of the United States. And as you know, that has been a driving force for a lot of this quote-unquote DEI, ESG agenda that has not only infiltrated, but let's be honest, dominated the education system over the last several decades. Even my education system, when we're talking about the environment and recycling and climate change, very much pushed by the United Nations and their subsidies. Those subsidies have grown from what used to be a baker's dozen or so when I was a kid to literally thousands of different entities and organizations. So what is the reality of what we're seeing right now with the Department of Education, with the funding, and then the restructuring of kind of these corporate, entities, if you will, the PFSs, the pay for success model that essentially almost negate that choice, unfortunately, in many of these arenas?
Yeah, well, I might start by noting that, as far as the executive orders that Trump signed rescinding a lot of the DEI stuff, most of those were actually, they just basically overturned previous executive orders, many of which don't actually pertain to the Department of Education. And then also, there are specific DEI provisions in several of the bills that I had named earlier in this episode. And one in particular, Every Student Succeeds Act, was brought up during the McMahon hearing. And she was asked if basically, would she uphold those provisions in ESSA? And she kind of did a filibuster. She kind of danced around it a little bit. I took that to indicate, because part of it was, well, I am aware that there are provisions in ESSA, and then it went on to how bad everything is and how we need to fix it. So it was an indication to me that she's aware and is going to comply with those types of DEI provisions. So, right, the amount of DEI that can be cut by those executive orders is minimal. Okay, regarding the pay for success partnerships, that would come through something called the I think it's Educating Children for Choice Act. I believe we talked about this on that TNT episode as well. It's been in the making for quite a while. The idea here is that what it's going to do is they will basically give tax credits to individuals and corporations that donate to nonprofit corporations known as scholarship granting organizations. Now, most of these, or at least a lot of them, are currently what are known as impact investment organizations. Okay. And so impact investing, there's sort of an umbrella term. It can involve social impact investment bonds. It can involve pay for success contracts. They also have other plays on that: pay for outcomes, pay for performance. But in education, the main one is pay for success. And there are, again, specific provisions in ESSA for pay for success. So again, there are provisions in ESSA that the executive orders cannot curtail as far as DEI, PFS impact funding. One of the SGOs that I noted in the article is called the Point Foundation, and this one hands out scholarships specifically to LGBTQ BIPOC populations, trying to help their career outcomes. And so you could consider those to be impact investments that are geared towards the ESG metrics, right? Environment, social governance. Another term for the S part of social is basically the DEI part of it. Now, if you still are skeptical and think that, you know, all the DEI stuff's going to go bye-bye, you should note that several of the think tanks in the Koch brothers state policy network are also involved in impact investing. So one such organization, American Enterprise Institute, put out a piece, and they talked about pay for success in the realm of school choice in particular. That was written by Max Eden, who is an author on Project 2025. Other Koch brothers spin think tanks that push pay for success and other types of impact investing include the Ed Choice think tank, which I mentioned. Lindsay Burke, who's the main author of Project 2025, is a fellow there. The Heritage Foundation is also looking into impact investments. Lindsay Burke is also an official at Heritage, along with another Project 2025 author, and his name is John Butcher. And then the Charles Koch Foundation itself is also involved in impact investing, in particular with partnerships with Google and Social Impact, or I'm sorry, Social Finance is the name of the company. It's one of the earliest and most prevalent social impact investment firms.
So let's rewind a little bit, because you've mentioned, you know, the Koch brothers impact, and that's an impact on education, again, that goes back decades. But even in the first Trump administration, you have Betsy DeVos. And, you know, you go through extensively her connections with this kind of overarching agenda that seems to be pushing forward. Could you get into kind of both of those roles, what the Kochs have funded in the past and continue to fund? I mean, there's still, what, a couple of them? The main guys are dead that we used to hear about, but there's still a couple of them rocking and rolling. They do have kids. The Koch Institute's going to be around and have influence for some time. Again, there may be some rebranding down. They might start something new, but that money and that agenda is pushing forward, is it not?
Yeah, and you know, just if you want to take a look at DeVos to sort of look at how some of these think tanks that were part of this Koch state policy network influenced basically the rise of DeVos and also her administration. DeVos was involved in many think tanks. She has funded Heritage. She's either been on the board or funded Ed Choice. She's partnered with something called Excel in Ed. It used to be the Excellence for Education. It used to be FEE was the original acronym. They changed it now. Now they call it Excel in Ed. And that is a think tank that was used to set up something called the Digital Learning Council that was created by Jeb Bush. And that was used to develop these 10 elements of high quality digital learning that became the basis for something called the Virtual Public Schools Act, which was a boilerplate bill that was drafted by the American Legislative Exchange Council, which DeVos is also a part of. Again, it's also part of the SPIN network. And the Virtual Public Schools Act basically was disseminated to a bunch of state legislators to put in bills to basically put public funding into those virtual online charter schools. These sort of got the foot in the door for the ed tech industry. These became the first major platforms where you could install the adaptive learning courseware and other applications that data mine students' psychometrics. It's interesting to note, another person involved in that Excel in Ed milieu was actually, his name's Kevin Chavis. He's also on part of the American Federation for Children, which is another DeVos organization. And he was on Bush's Digital Learning Council. He also was at a panel at Excel in Ed where former Assistant Secretary of Ed Chester Finn, who was the assistant to Bill Bennett being another member of the American Legislative Exchange Council, he was Secretary of Ed, took over the legacy of something called Project BEST, Better Education Skills Through Technology, which was leaked by my mentor, Charlotte Thompson Iserbyt, when she was in the department during the Reagan administration. And so what you see here is, an overlap between right-wingers, left-wingers, basically MAGA Republicans in DeVos, and then the old neocon Republicans in Bush, plus Democrats like Chavis. And it's worth noting here that DeVos also has connections to a couple of the other authors of Project 2025's education chapter. These include Jim Blue and Robert S. Eitel. Robert S. Eitel was also part of the Alliance for School Choice, which was another DeVos School Choice Foundation. Blue and Eitel both had positions in DeVos's Department of Education.
The book is School World Order, the Technocratic Globalization of Corporatized Education. I want you to check it out, as well as the article we're discussing here over at unlimitedhangout.com. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to get into what adaptive learning really means, what artificial intelligence really means for the future of education. There's a lot of tech bros all of a sudden surrounding Trump, some that have openly stabbed him in the back in the past, and now they seem to have more than a seat at the table. We're going to discuss that and much more with John Klychek after this.
I couldn't give anything a higher endorsement.
I would be remiss had I not include Cardio Miracle on my very short list of secrets.
It's the real deal. It's a real product. It's not another supplement.
I'm operating about 6 to 8 hours, and I've noticed that being on this Cardio Miracle has made a huge difference.
Since I started taking Cardio Miracle, about 8 months into it, the benefits have been fantastic.
If I get hungry, then I just have a Cardio Miracle.
Not only is it safe, but it's necessary to take Cardio Miracle to stay well.
This let me sleep, it's feeling with more energy, more get up and go, and it's all because of what this company does.
For me as a doctor, Cardio Miracle is a staple.
Cardio Miracle to me is hope in a glass.
To try Cardio Miracle for yourself and get a special fan discount, go to the host page right now and click the link for Cardio Miracle.
What do a neurosurgeon, a country artist, and a television and radio host have in common? They all saw the writing on the wall. Big banks sharing your financial information with big government. Join them as owners in Old Glory Bank, the pro-America online bank that protects your privacy, security, and liberty. Invest today at own.oldglorybank.com.
And we are back. All right, John, let's talk a little tech here. Now, your article rightfully highlights people like Peter Thiel, who, for those that don't know, is also involved in artificial intelligence in our education system and really a lot of different aspects of social engineering via technology in general. It's not just Palantir. It goes way. It's not just PayPal, Palantir, Facebook. It's just about everything. This guy's got his little dicka-dicka-doos in. And let's not forget, J.D. Vance is an acolyte of this guy and very much was positioned as the vice president due to Thiel. If anybody thinks differently, I mean, just look at the Rogan podcasting time period. There's a reason Thiel's on there talking about Jeffrey Epstein just before they make the big run of Vance, Trump, you name it. That's not an accident at all. You see Sam Altman coming into the mix. You see Zuckerbro, gold chain in it, crazy hair. I'm sorry. You got Larry Ellison now in the mix, talking about more hate and lies and AI, tailored medicines. Let's just call them that because I want to keep this episode on the up and up. I want to post this on YouTube a little later on. So you got all those different aspects, and they're going to be also driving what I think is going to be the core of what is expected in these education systems, whether it's private schools, home schools, religious institutions, or the traditional public schools that we're now aware of. There's a lot of talk about quote-unquote charter schools. So let's talk about that aspect in particular, what people like Thiel and Ellison are actually involved in, what technology has already been put into place, what you saw streamlined. I mean, again, the book's a few years old, folks. What you saw streamlined under the first Trump administration, and what do you think will be streamlined under this Trump administration?
Yeah, well, the lockdowns really helped get everything kind of a big boost as far as all the ed tech stuff goes, right? Because we were all forced to be locked down, and we had to go online, and then we had to use the LMSs, the learning management systems, and then that opened the door for plugging in all these different apps, cognitive, behavioral, socio-emotional, etc. And those are kind of like grandfathered in some ways. I was thinking that there would be more of a push to like a hybrid model after if and when lockdowns were fully rolled back. That hasn't exactly happened, but when I've talked to people at the colleges where I teach, I've been told that the amount of in-person enrollment dropped. This was a couple of years ago that I asked, and maybe it's picked up since we're past 2020, a little bit further. But at the time, it was about half the students just said, "Well, I'll just stay online." And the other one is that now if there's a snow day, there's no day off. You got to plug back in. So you're on. So you have to keep the online platform. You have to have the whole curriculum up there, even if you're teaching in person. If you have any kind of emergency, everything defaults to online. So the stuff that's particularly pernicious that's can be used in there. They're not necessarily mandated quite yet. Like I use D2L for one of the schools where I teach. It's Desire to Learn. It's an LMS, and it has an adaptive learning app called Brightspace Leap. Now, it's not necessarily embedded in it. I don't plug it into my modules, but the students in the home dashboard, they can go and use it if they want. And it's essentially what adaptive learning courseware is. It's based off of B.F. Skinner's analog teaching machines. They're designed to data mine students' cognitive behavioral psychometrics. Basically, it creates algorithms that show if the students learn quickly and efficiently, it'll expedite them to higher learning. If they don't learn very efficiently or too slow, they will remediate them, have them repeat the lessons. That sort of feedback loop kind of puts them on a career pathway. That career pathway would be facilitated by the Pay for Success funds. So that's sort of what the cognitive behavioral aspect of the adaptive learning courseware is. Peter Thiel has been invested in certain cognitive behavioral apps. It's either Clever or Newton. I think it's both. Actually, if my memory serves me correctly, if I had my database up, I could double check it, but I'm going to put it out there. I'm pretty sure I'm right. Khan Academy has also been funded either directly or indirectly by Elon Musk. And then Larry Ellison, I just learned this one. I didn't realize this. I've written about K-12 Inc. quite extensively. It's in the book. One of the founders of it was Bill Bennett, who I mentioned, right? Secretary of Ed under Reagan. He was the founding chairman, but the early seed money, a bulk of that was given by Larry Ellison. So all three of these tech folks are sort of that are in the Trump administration, have their tentacles in this ed tech ecosystem. You also have ChatGPT being facilitated for basically AI tutors, right? So so you can put Sam Altman in there, and as you know, Elon Musk was also involved in the founding of OpenAI as well.
So let's talk about those aspects. How streamlined are we going to see artificial intelligence in our elementary, middle, and high school programs, that K through 12? Because, right now, first of all, I'm not in love with artificial intelligence. The narratives surrounding them, you don't really even have to try that hard to put them to the test. They're deceptive. When you call them out on their deception or their omissions, which seem purposeful, they'll apologize to you to try to soften the blow. Oh, I apologize for omitting this or that. Oh, that is a good point. Or when they outright are deceptive and you try to give them, make them produce a source for their deception and they can't do it, it's called a hallucination. Oh, the AI's hallucinating, as if that's okay. When do we see it implemented into schools? Because look, Grok 3.0 is out there. Chat GPT, I believe we're on 4.0, hello, where it is more human-like than ever. In another 6 months, I would say, at least audio-wise, it's going to be indistinguishable. That's if they want to put it out there. They may be forced to put it out there in the same manner that you're going to get competing models out there that are going to have different types of deception, like this DeepSeek that comes out, right, and runs on much less energy, but deception in different areas. They're going to deceive you about China and the CCP and their great leader Xi Jinping, where they may be more honest about leaders in the United States and programs here, etc. So what are your thoughts on that? When do you see that being streamlined? And as that's streamlined, what's that going to mean for traditional teachers?
Yeah, I think that, so one of the other school choice provisions that are proposed in Project 2025 and that have been were sort of danced around in the hearings, the McMahon hearings, would be to take Title I funds, which are for low-income students, and to put them into what are called education savings accounts. They're like vouchers, but it's just a slightly different financial mechanism. It's basically, they're going to be monies that parents can apply for, and they can take that money and they can use it for, quote, curricular materials, quote, education therapies, quote, personal tutors, but also private tuition at private schools or home schools. Without digressing, that will bring in federal regulations on private schools and home schools. So as far as choice, right, it'll just basically expand government reach. It'll make all forms of non-government education essentially beholden to government regulations. But if you look at the language there, right, curricular materials, well, that could very easily be adaptive learning courseware. It could be a Clever. It could be a Newton. Education therapies, that could be a social emotional learning biofeedback wearable, such as Heart Math, or DeVos's NeuroCore company doesn't, I'm pretty sure it's defunct. I can't find it anywhere on the internet, but she had a company that used EEG halos, kind of like a company that's called BrainCo, that was a partnership between Harvard academics and a Chinese state-run electronics company. But these are used for, her NeuroCore was used for managing ADHD. Heart Math is used. They actually have it at the wellness center at one of the schools where I teach. You can go in there if you have testing anxiety, and they will run you through the trademark breathing exercise to get your heart rate in preparation for taking a test. But it could also be what we talked about on a TNT episode, which is the Moxie robot. Right? It could also be that, and that could also fall under the category of personal tutors. Personal tutors could be GPT AI tutors. They could be the Moxie, as I mentioned. They could be Conmigo, which comes out of Khan Academy. They could be an open AI version. And so the ESAs, they float them like, oh, you're going to be able to go to the school of your choice. Now, let me ask you something, Jason. If you're in a really impoverished community, how many other schools do you think are even in the area? And if they are, Are they just other public schools? Is it maybe a charter school that performs a little bit better? Maybe you have a parochial, a religious school somewhere nearby, but I'm going to wager that the bulk of those ESAs given to those low-income families, that they're not going to be able to afford the transportation or have the time to travel that distance. So, and that money, I don't think is going to be enough to actually fit the bill for like a Groton or a Dalton or some elite private school. So where is the bulk of that money going to go? It's going to go into stuff that you could supplement your public school with. That's going to be all the ed tech stuff that you're going to be using in your home with all the data mining that comes along with it.
So let's talk about that, because we've already had a huge integration of Google, right? For those that don't know, Chromebooks are the thing in the vast majority of public schools. Even if you're homeschooling, especially when you're talking about younger kids, a lot of parents are going to choose the Chromebook anyway because it's cheaper. It does everything online. There's an ecosystem there of quote-unquote Google Docs, et cetera, that have been mainlined, just like Microsoft was mainlined in schools, and even before Microsoft, IBM was mainlined in schools for people like myself when I was just learning to dick-a-dick-a-do and type and play a little Oregon Trail every once in a while. Where does Google fit into this? Where like, that's a big question for me.
Yeah, I feel like Google might be sort of in the camp of those companies that wants to lean harder into the DEI stuff. I don't, it doesn't seem to be very close to the Trump ecosystem, so to speak. But as you know, Eric Schmidt and Peter Thiel, they both hang out at Bilderberg on the steering committee. I thought it was funny. I don't want to digress, but there was this, I saw in, I think it was Fox, they're like, we found money that went to Stacey Abrams. And it was like, oh, well, I guess that money is going to go from one from her Bilderberg steering pocket to Peter Thiel's. But I sort of digressed there a little bit. Sorry, go pick me up.
No. It's a good point. I mean, for those that don't know what he's talking about, first of all, you have Peter Thiel, who has been going to Bilderberg for well over a decade now. He's on the steering committee. Same old story with Eric Schmidt on the steering committee. You've got the quote-unquote libertarian right-winger, and then you've got the big lefty kind of unapologetic authoritarian Kissinger acolyte who literally wrote a book on artificial intelligence with Kissinger, his last one, before he died, and called him his quote-unquote best friend. For those that don't know the geopolitical significance, they just added a new steering committee member, and that would be Jens Stoltenberg, the former head of NATO, to give you an idea of the type of warfare that we're talking about. Now, Stacey Abrams has been a darling of the left in the Democratic Party for some time, and I think she started her run at Bilderberg in 2017, has really been a darling of the organization ever since. These things are not discussed in the mainstream media, but once again, these agendas, especially involving technology, are pushed forward. I'm sure by now you've seen the Mark Andreessen clip where he's talking about this meeting with the Biden administration in May on artificial intelligence, and they're informing him that basically they're creating a walled garden of AI through their, obviously it's through their chief artificial intelligence officer program and their military industrial complex. And he's like, well, how are you going to do that? The math is out there. And they just tell him the same way that we took entire realms of physics out of the research community during the Cold War. And it's like, oh, you have those type of censorship powers. When it comes to AI-driven products in the education arena, is it even possible to create that walled garden? Or are there going to be elements of disruption just by the technology's very nature? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's, you mentioned Mark Andreessen and, some of the other people in the intellectual dark web, the Peter Thiel sort of crowd, and they all a lot of these people made their rounds around Rogan. Whitney Webb sent me a tweet from was it from Palmer Luckey? Yeah, I think it's Palmer Luckey, he's another Palantir guy. And he asked the question, what will happen when scientific consensus agrees that artificial intelligence can teach students more efficiently than human teachers? Well, the first part I thought I might note is that scientific consensus. I thought we laughed at that term enough over climate change and lockdown stuff, right? I'm pretty sure, right? Not how scientific method works, right? Okay, that's the first part. Second part is that I've thought quite a bit about this. Now, if you have a GPT AI, it's a large language model. Maybe it could help with mathematics. Now, my specialty is language, so I'm speaking about a discipline that is not my wheelhouse, and so maybe somebody in the mathematics would disagree. But sort of the idea that you're using a language model to help you with quantitative reasoning, that the qualitative language model shouldn't interfere with the quantitative calculative process of the brain. But in terms of language arts, right? I've been teaching language arts my whole life, studying them, right? I'm a writer, right? I think a lot about language and I use it and refine it quite a bit. And if there's one skill that makes you a better communicator, whether verbally or textually, it's the ability to introspectively look within, metacognitively monitor your thoughts, the dialogue, the monologue that you have, find any contradictions, check to see if the categories of your mind comport with the categories of reality, right? But this requires a metacognitive layer of consciousness that looks within, right, and monitors the language. If you use a GPT AI, it's essentially going to fill in that cognitive process, right? If you're using this large language model to make your grammar cleaner, or make your sentences more precise, or make your paragraphs more cohesive by making the topic sentence fit with the supporting details, right? It's doing all of that recursive metacognition for you, right? Which means like it's doing all of the heavy lifting. Essentially it will replace that part of the mind. It will hamstring, it will curtail, it will reduce language processing abilities. And, this is something that Eric Schmidt and Kissinger sort of note in that the book they wrote on AI. I think it's the term is either cognitive fatigue or cognitive decline or something like that, where they basically say that, right, as we rely more and more on these large language models, which are going to be, I think are going to get a lot of money from these ESAs if they go through, that those large language models will actually impede consciousness.
School World Order is the book. We got to take one last break. When we come back, I want to hit any other points that John thinks that are important coming up with this Trump administration, and how quickly a lot of these things are going to be enacted. Final segment of Making Sense of the Madness after this.
Attention American business owners, big or small, your company deserves to be seen, and Patriot TV is here to help. We're proud to support American-owned businesses by offering a free listing of your company on Patriot TV Store. That's right, no cost, just visibility to millions of loyal viewers who want to support American businesses like yours. Whether you run a small business or a nationwide company, this is your chance to reach a dedicated audience on Patriot TV Store, on major smart TVs like Samsung, LG, Sony, TCL, Roku, also on Apple, Android, Amazon, Fire Stick, YouTube, Facebook, Rumble, Truth Social, X, and of course, the Patriot TV Store app and website. It's our way of giving back to the community and helping American businesses thrive. Let's work together to build a stronger America. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity. Get your free business listing today. Contact us at info@patriot.tv.
I couldn't give anything a higher endorsement.
I would be remiss had I not include Cardio Miracle on my very short list of secrets.
It's the real deal. It's a real product. It's not another supplement.
I'm operating about 6 to 8 hours, and I've noticed that being on this Cardio Miracle has made a huge difference.
Since I started taking Cardio Miracle, about 8 months into it, the benefits have been fantastic.
You know, if I get hungry, then I just have a Cardio Miracle.
Not only is it safe, but it's necessary to take Cardio Miracle to stay well.
This let me sleep, it's feeling with more energy, more get up and go, and it's all because of what this company does.
For me as a doctor, Cardio Miracle is a staple.
Cardio Miracle to me is hope in a glass.
To try Cardio Miracle for yourself and get a special fan discount, go to the host page right now and click the link for Cardio Miracle.
And we are back. So, John, number one, what else should we be watching, especially with how quickly this administration is moving? And what do you see happening in the education arena, in that K through 12 arena, in the next 18 to 24 months? Say halfway through this Trump administration, what does the country look like in that regard?
I think that they're going to try to, I mean, you can see it, right? They're moving as fast as possible, right? I think they want to get as much done as they can before midterm elections. I'm pretty sure that in order to pass their Department of Ed reorganization act, they need more than a simple majority. And so I don't know if they actually have that. So, will they be able to restructure the department accordingly? Again, it's in some ways it's a moot point because it's basically just shuffling the chalkboards on the Titanic, to use a phrase from my article. So I think one of the first things that they'll probably move for is to pass legislation, the ECCA, the school choice bill that's going to authorize the tax credits to the SGOs, and or some amendment to ESEA that will enable the Title I funds or a portion of those to go to the education savings accounts. Those, I think, they can pass those with a simple majority. So I think that those ones are the things to be on the lookout for. And my best warning, so to speak, would be if you want choice, we already have those choices. Just know that if you take that federal money, if you look at state legislation that it's based on, so one example I pulled out was the Alabama Choose Act. There are provisions in there, and they're sort of open-ended. In some ways, you could say like, oh, well, those are loose regulations, but it's also foot in the door for maybe, amending it and sort of tightening down, right? Because the regulations don't necessarily, those can be done by the executive departments, right? They don't necessarily have to pass a new bill. So just know that even if it looks like you might have relative autonomy with how you use the ESAs, maybe to get everybody's foot in the door, build the ecosystem, create dependency on that system, and then they slowly bring in regulations of the private schools and the home schools.
If you were to give advice to people with kids right now, what's the way they're going to get the best education with the most autonomy, given the systems in place and the ones that are coming?
I really think that the best options, I mean, even if you're in the public schools, I think that having some kind of a homeschooling co-op, or maybe it could just be supplementary for private tutoring. But I really think at the end of the day, the buzzword here is like, parental control, parental autonomy, school choice. I think parental autonomy should involve more than just the choice of where to spend the money and send the child, right? It should involve, sitting down and reading with the child and, doing some numeracy skills. And right, if you can find other parents that are in the neighborhood that want to do that with you, whether in a homeschool, whether in a co-op or just supplementary, I really think that's the real parental control. That's the real school choice. And you can do that without the ESAs or the federal funds or the state funds. Obviously, that makes things more difficult. But, I'm an adjunct. I don't know if anybody knows what that means, but it means I get, I'm not tenure tracked. I get paid per class, per semester. I have to bounce around at 3 different schools. What I'm saying is I have very little resources. And I do all this type of stuff on fumes, right? I mean, writing these articles, doing this type of activism. I don't have kids. So this is the energy, I guess, that I would put into teaching my child if I had one. So that's the best recommendation I can give. I don't think there's an institutional solution, whether it's public, private, or some other form of choice.
Well, I think number one, you got to look in the mirror and you got to be your own hero on this one, just like everything else. Like you just said, you got to read to your kid. My big thing with my nieces is I'm trying to keep them as busy as possible. In other words, playing sports, having jobs. When they say something off kilter, having a conversation about history or what's really going on in the news and what people are saying, but having a relationship with your kid and constantly asking the question, what'd you learn today? And if, nothing. No, they taught you something. You sat there for quite some time. It might not have meant much to you, but they said something to you. And really, again, you got to keep up on those things because nobody's going to do it for you. And the bottom line is there's always going to be obstacles when it comes to you, your children, and other people's history and viewpoints. The book is School World Order, the Technocratic Globalization of Corporatized Education. John, let everybody know how they can check out everything John Klychek and support your work, brother.
You can go to schoolworldorder.info. That has all the social media. It's Dallas Professor on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call that. Got a database there if you'd like to check out my archives. Book is at trineday.com, but it's also a link to that on the website.
All right, John, we really do appreciate you, and I appreciate you guys watching this show right here on Patriot.tv 5 days a week, where the truth lives. Remember to this guy, it is not about left or right, and I assure you your child's education is not a left or right issue. It is always about right and wrong. I absolutely love you guys, and we will see you on the flip side.